Hi, I'm Matthew Cheung, CEO of ipushpull, and the following is a conversation with Michael Maurer from Microsoft, who is a data analytics and AI solutions specialist, on the topic, what is your chat strategy? So Michael shares his thoughts on how Microsoft Teams can become an entry point into using AI, how data is paramount in the use of large language models, and then he goes on to share his ideas on the future of AI in business. Enjoy. So, Michael, thanks for joining me today. So, Michael, firstly, what do you do at Microsoft?
So I'm a data AI specialist at Microsoft, focusing on understanding the client scenario and trying to map it into the Microsoft product portfolio. So getting the right specialists on board for supporting my client to adopting Azure technologies like OpenAI, ChatGPT.
So you must be very busy at the moment.
Yes. So in sales terms, we're in a luxury moment that the clients call us. I don't need to prospect, identify, reach out. Use cases are spreading faster than we can follow up with right now.
Interesting. And how many of those use cases are focused around chat and with Teams? Because there's two interfaces or tools that you can be used with how people are going to market with these ideas. So with ChatGPT, when it first came out, end of November, all of a sudden that GPT and large language models have been around for a few years, but this new kind of interface on top of it suddenly changed the game. Now that you can have, you can plug directly into the GPT via Azure, and you've got Microsoft Teams. How many of the use cases you're seeing are plugging those two things together, and how many is actually using GPT in other areas as well, like outside of just chat?
I would like to take one step back and look at the ChatGPT interface as such. So now thinking of the way a human is interacting with a computer is currently changing. So in today's world, we have this kind of taskbar. You have the icons, per task you want to execute, there's an application for. And this changes now tremendously as you get a different entry point in interacting with your computer. So instead of opening Outlook to write the email, instead of opening PowerPoint to do the slides, you will get that as an entry point so that you can interact with all kind of settings, with the capabilities of these applications directly in natural language. So based on that, we see it's just another channel you're starting that interaction with. And interestingly, those companies who started adopting Teams broadly, so to have by topic, by account, or whatsoever, Teams channels then created, they are really seeing that also for cross-Teams collaboration, so within Teams itself. And for example, with integration into CRM system, Dynamics, Salesforce, others, it's getting a new entry point in maintaining certain data, accessing certain data. So I don't need to go to Power BI to understand the latest sales report, rather than chatting just in my account channel to get the numbers for this account as a report dynamically pushed. And this is something where I see that the entry point, the user experience, which started normally by the user is going to find the right application, open it, and then executing the task, is getting more into mode that you have your preferred working style, and there you find your chat-enabled kind of Copilot, in the words of Microsoft, whatever you name it. But here it's definitely kind of merging the access entry points. So thinking of once you have built a chat-enabled system, you can start having these entry points in your intranet, in Teams, in like you did now in Symphony. The architecture behind more or less stays the same. So also the clients currently are reviewing their investments in OpenAI, because sometimes it starts with an UI in mind. But when you sit next to someone really working with the tech, you find other UIs are the kind of sweet spot, the main entry points, and integrating there does make more sense than searching for something else. So with Teams, definitely from the adoption rate we see, it's a very fast adoption rate with Teams since the COVID crisis. So it is well established in the FSI industry, or at least at my FSI clients. So having there an entry point is a preferred starting point for many of my clients.
How do you see Teams being used going forward, where in financial markets historically you've had Bloomberg Chat, more recently things like Symphony, you had Reuters Messenger, which is now Workspace Messenger, and various different chat platforms which have existed in different areas of financial markets or commodities, and each kind of area seems to have gravitated towards slightly different platforms. How do you see Teams launching from I suppose the footprint that it has, i.e. on everyone's desktop, but for a lot of people it's used for chatting internally or doing video calls, less so for financial market workflows. When I'm talking specifically about kind of pre-trade workflows, post-trade workflows, things where there's interaction with clients and counterparts and so on. To date, Teams has not been the platform of choice for that, but as we go forward, how do you see that evolving?
So the interesting part here is that you're living in that kind of world of APIs. So I see that service consumption is not limited to a user interface or if there is the possibility to integrate. Think of Teams becoming a kind of agglomeration point, or as well the Microsoft Copilot story, an agglomeration point where you start the conversation, but then it gets routed to the kind of most relevant chat experience. For example, then to Reuters or Bloomberg capabilities who underpin these kind of Microsoft Copilot experiences. So that is something from the envisioning phase, it's easy to think about that. And let's wait what our product groups are going to bring in that area now. From the Teams adoption itself, we see, for example, a lot of work being executed still in Excel as the main tool of working with data, consuming data, analyzing, and publishing nice pivot charts. However, that is also now merging into that kind of Copilot experience. When thinking of Team as the starting points, then leveraging what Excel has underneath or your analytics platform like Synapse. So those are coming closer together. And I think from a data governance perspective, many of my clients want to profit from that in order to get to know where is what data actually used in the environment. Because in these tons of Excel sheets, it's sometimes difficult to understand where does the source come from and the lineage behind data quality aspects as well. So there I see AI is a conversation starter, but there are then dependencies about where to expose what data, as well as where to make it accessible for these chat experiences. So for me, the interface with Teams is the entry point. And then we have this kind of ecosystem around to think of what is about sensitivity of data. Should my Copilot be able to access A, B, C, or only A and B because C has a different sensitivity label and should not be taken into account? No. So that is something where you can think of different scenarios where I see Teams as such is that entry point, bringing the Office 365 graph, so the information about usage of documents, together with analytics platforms and the kind of infrastructure services. So that is, from my data AI perspective, a quite interesting sweet spot, because you get already the graph information, you don't have to additionally add them.
How do you see the users who can, so you've got something like Power Automate, right, which is very powerful and gluing things together and creating workflows and so on.
Mhm.
You said earlier your comment that Teams or any kind of platform, but Teams is the entry point where you can start a particular workflow, but then through APIs that are connected everywhere, you can then connect into lots of different things. How does that sit with no-code development versus the API integration layer that actually needs to be behind the scenes with when you're talking to large financial institutions can be a bit of a mess. And it isn't as easy just to connect via API because there's very old systems and things don't talk to each other. Well, how do you see the no-code developer operating in the world where there's highly regulated, difficult to access, disparate data? How do those two things plug together?
Yeah, and this is a very interesting area because of this thinking of this self-service on your data. This requires definitely a different data governance strategy, and all these kind of buzzwords like data mesh came into mind. However, those who really started adopting these architectural principles, they can now profit from them. Because if you have really started defining data products with ownership and being able to vote about the quality of the data, you can then expose only with a certain rating quality data into the experiences. So without that pre-investment, it's that kind of difficult statement about garbage in, garbage out. So in order to get the most out of your chat experience based on your data, you need to ensure that certain quality levels are there. So thinking of that experience where you receive recommendations based on data, if relevance suffers, the users might stop adopting the service for them. So if you have 10 times a bad experience, why should you start with a chat the 11th time? So I think that is the exercise my clients are currently undergoing, not only developing that chat service, but ensuring the quality of outcome to have a broad adoption, to make most out of that investment in developing it. And there I encourage my clients to start testing as fast as possible. Now, thinking of a self-service notion, most of my clients are in that kind of regulated industry with certain IT service management processes in place. So for them, it's a little bit, for the corporate ITs, the nightmare of having a self-service platform and no one knows what happens. But on the other hand, if you implement self-service data platforms the right way, it will really free up IT from kind of being the servant to business in building the next report. And that is something where we see interest. However, it's, for example, in manufacturing, we have clients who broadly adopted a self-service power platform. So having the business building applications, and it reminds me that these Lotus Notes applications, and they started adopting that broadly. And then they ranked the applications by usage and taking them over into their corporate umbrella as soon as a certain threshold was hit. And this approach is in discussion in FSI, but right now it's really that more strict separation between an IT building a service, ensuring an SLA or OLA within the company, rather than having the business doing the actual development themselves. And it's definitely about the value business employee can bring to the company. So is it worth having the most special guy working on an application in terms of salary, in terms of knowledge, in terms of client contact, which might be a better investment not having him building these applications rather than giving feedback and doing testing intensively?
How do you see Microsoft, for a lot of people, sits on their desktop with different tools they can use for their own use, and a lot of the time for internal within the company use, less so when it's kind of internal to external, because of the nature of data sharing can be clunky and SFTP and APIs take a long time to connect together and so on. How do you see the growth of what's happening on a user's desktop and how they're communicating with people externally? And then with that, how do you see minimizing the friction for people to communicate with each other? For example, we're working with you at the moment around having a Teams app, which sits on the App Store, which is going to be a certain threshold. So hopefully some companies can click the button and off they go. But because of the nature of some FSI companies, there's still various InfoSec that companies have to go through.
Yeah.
How do you see that moving forward in the next few years, kind of minimizing the friction and making it much easier to communicate externally with clients and customers and counterparts?
So B2B, let's say services. This was a topic Microsoft started with Active Directory in year 2015, I think. And that time, the first B2C scenarios and B2B scenarios came into that service. And over time, it was expanded into different, let's say, buckets, different areas of interaction. For example, in Teams today, you can have multiple identities joining your Teams client and then switching so that you can have external collaboration. So Microsoft with ipushpull, having a separate team setup in a B2B scenario working like a charm. The thing is, as soon as you have, for example, applications built and published into a store, then the question comes up from the internal IT, is the publisher trustworthy? Is the code of a certain quality? And can I protect my content with DLP or whatsoever? And in these scenarios, now taking the example of the Teams application store, we have a certification process in place. And getting through with a Teams or custom Teams app is also then something where we publish the certified applications on our documentation so that the internal ITs can review from client X that application was published and I want to consume it because I have a business relation between that other company and myself. And if it's then code reviewed by Microsoft, then the kind of trustworthiness of the source is definitely bigger than just handing over a zip file, which you can still deploy and install in your Teams environment. So looking at that, the mechanisms are sometimes not aligned across the portfolio of Microsoft. So having at Teams a different experience than if you publish your solution in the Azure Marketplace, or publishing data products in Purview in B2B. So with Azure Data Share, for example, underneath. I assume that we will see further investment of Microsoft in this area to align the experiences and make it easier, more intuitive to start sharing information.
Yep. So to finish off, it'd be good to hear your thoughts on. It's obviously been a very busy year since OpenAI have released ChatGPT, and like you said, there's this moment in time where, from a sales perspective, there's this kind of luxury moment where customers are knocking at your door. Similarly, we've seen the same thing in our business. How do you see that rate of growth continuing and proliferating using these AI kind of out of the box tools across different integrations, platforms, and so on?
Yeah. All of us probably have heard in the past of the Gartner hype cycle. And thinking of chatbot experiences, I have the impression that we had that first hype in the year 2015, 2016 with that first chatbot wave. However, the capabilities were kind of limited. Right now, I see that the let's say the speed of innovation we have seen in the AI area is unlocking certain scenarios which no one has been able to think before. So my hope is that we are in that cycle of the hype cycle where we see then a continued growth until saturation. Right now, I have the impression also the market is currently fiddling out scenarios worth investing in. So most often I hear, let's use it for an optimized intranet search. But optimized intranet search is nice, but no one will create revenue out of that. And my clients started thinking of where are services either saving cost or generating revenue. So understanding the business model behind. And I have the impression that the capabilities these services bring to market support in both areas really interesting scenarios. So that's why I think, yeah, there will be a continued growth and not the kind of second hype. When thinking of where will the market lead with technology, I'm very impressed that my product group opened up the AI studio for third-party services plugging in. So thinking of you come in with a Copilot experience with the first ask, and then you have third parties or open source hosted on Azure. So AI models, which you can then train or customize on your own to have specialized models running. So this time it's not the Microsoft has the one and only AI. It's really an ecosystem of AI services now being able to integrate. And that's what's make me excited, because I think that's the right approach for the market, because no one knows what next is with innovation at that next step. Yeah? So I'd rather integrate the newest fancy stuff which serves to a certain quality than having to stick to a piece of technology.
Yep. And it's that interoperability and building block components so that, yeah, when the next thing comes along, it's very easy to slot it in. Great. Michael, thank you very much.
Thank you, Matthew.
This is the ipushpull podcast series about what is your chat strategy. Over the next few months, we'll talk to leaders in the field and their views on the chat ecosystem, chatbots, and how AI is evolving the space. We hope you learned something new.